Welcome to Zero to Start, a podcast about immersive development that brings you inspiring conversations with immersive creators, developers, and industry leaders. I'm your host, Siciliana Trevino. In just a few short years, mobile gaming has exploded, now accounting for almost half of all gaming, with the market worth an astounding $90 billion. By 2026, the mobile AR market is predicted to reach $36 billion in revenue. As mobile AR gaming evolves beyond Pokemon Go, one company is going all in to redefine the space with a first-of-its-kind multiplayer AR fighting game. My special guest today is AR/VR pioneer Sarah Stumbo Huth, gameplay engineer at Jadu AR. Sarah takes us through the twists and turns of bringing this groundbreaking augmented reality game to mobile and her personal journey in the industry. She also fills us in on Jadu's first single-player campaign, launching May 21st. You can download Jadu from the App Store or the Google Play Store to experience your very own battle arena on the go and see why this exciting new game is setting the standard for AR gaming on mobile. Let's get started. Welcome to Zero to Start, Sarah. It's such a joy to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. It's a joy to be here. It was awesome meeting you at GDC at the Jadu food truck. And now we have this interview just a few weeks later.
It was such a fun activation. Tell us about bringing Jadu AR to mobile and some of the unique challenges that you faced.
Jadu is a multiplayer augmented reality fighting game available on iOS and Android. We released it on the App Store and Google Play in October of 2023. So we've been live for a little over 6 months now. We've been making a lot of incremental updates. We have some really significant updates planned for the near future. And we're still really in the early stages of bringing this thing to its full potential. But despite being in the early stages, we believe that we're really on the right track with developing an AR game that keeps people coming back and a game that people really want to play. We have really high download numbers, great user retention, and a really positive 4.9 star rating on the App Store.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think we're on to something here. It feels really good as a game developer to be building something that people want to play, especially in the XR space. It's difficult to develop something that just goes beyond the novelty of augmented reality. I think that's probably the biggest challenge that we faced at Jadu in getting from the early days of Jadu, where we were prototyping, trying to figure out what works, to actually committing to, okay, we're going to build a fighting game and actually committing to it and just going all in and shipping it. We had to take that time to find the fun, which is, you have to do that for any game that you're building, but specifically with AR, it wasn't just AR to be AR. We wanted to build something that would actually take advantage of what mobile augmented reality has to offer in terms of making a more spatialized, unique experience. That was probably the first challenge. We had the game in test flight for a year and a half before we actually shipped the fighting game. And there was so many iterations of it. One of the first things that we shipped to our community was more of a cinematic experience where you would meet your avatar for the first time in AR. And there was this really quick mini game where you would control your avatar and you would collect these little energy orbs. And it was like, the whole experience was maybe like 5 to 10 minutes. So it was something you would try once. You maybe would show your friends like, wow, look at how cool this is. Look at the potential that AR has. But there wasn't anything that was keeping people coming back. And we prototyped a lot of different platformer type things, mini games. But ultimately, we landed on a fighting game for 3 reasons. The first is that, it's a really well-established genre in gaming. People have been playing fighting games for years. Often when you get into gaming, one of the first mechanics that you're going to be introduced to is fighting. We don't have to teach people what a fighting game is. We just have to teach people what a fighting game in AR could look like. We thought that the AR aspect could bring a new dimension of spatial fighting mechanics that aren't really possible with other mobile fighting games or other console and PC fighting games. We also knew really early on from a lot of our prototyping that something that felt really good in mobile augmented reality was controlling a third person character. You've played the game now, so you know the first thing that you do is you place your avatar in AR and you move it around using a virtual joystick. And we found that that was really compelling. People really enjoyed that as a mechanic. So that was another reason that led us to a fighting game, is because it's a third person character controller based game.
So much fun when you first get into the game and you see your avatar and you have to fight out of a water tank or something. You have this sense of like, oh, I've hatched my avatar. And then I went and looked through all the different combinations of hair and costumes. And then you play the game and it's in your living room. And then the portal opens and some random avatar comes out and you never know what they're going to look like. And then you have these options. You have that joystick, like you were saying, where you can just tap to kick. There's all these different combinations of the shield and the punching and the kicking. The graphics are fun and amazing. You have haptics. And then the game's over in like just a few minutes. And then it's like, do you want to go again? I was like, no, it's late. And then as I started to look at some of the options for the avatar, I really wanted the hair with the buns. And I was like, no, I have to play like 5 more games to get the hair. And so I would like, I was just playing until I could level up. There was this sense of like, I have to beat every opponent so I can get the hair for my avatar. And that kept me coming back.
Yeah, you just described our core game loop that we have right now. And it's very simple. Fight, earn bloom, which is our in-game soft currency, and unlock new things for your character. We're in the process of adding even more progression. We have a big release we're calling season 1 coming up, where we're going to be releasing new characters, a single player campaign, and even more ways you can upgrade your character in terms of skill and progression. So hopefully we'll get you even more hooked in the near future. But the hardest part about developing any game is like finding that core loop that keeps people coming back. It's not just, oh, this is an AR game. There's other elements to the game as well. There's the character creator, there's the progression, and that's all just happening, in 2D, like a regular mobile game. And the fighting moments are these brief 60-second matches that happen in AR. So you can just get like a little bite size of AR gameplay into your day and then go on to whatever else you were doing.
The gameplay mechanics are so satisfying with the graphics and the haptics. It is one of those things that you would play in line somewhere, or if you're commuting. Or I was just immediately like, where are my friends on this? Like I wanted to start looking, and the leaderboards are really active, and the way that the ranking and the leaderboard works is also something that kind of gets you motivated.
Yeah, the social aspect was another thing that drove us to a fighting game as well. Around the time that we were prototyping the first version of the fighting game, we had a big 3-week sprint to prototype our first fighting game. But around that time, we were also developing this remote multiplayer technology, which is what allows 2 players in 2 different locations to share an AR experience together. And we also thought, oh, okay, a fighting game with an arena mode where you can either challenge your friends or go into a matchmaking server and match with someone totally random would be the perfect way to use this technology in an AR game. We're taking it beyond just, maps and
Mm-hmm.
and saying, hey, look, there's actually a lot more you can do with AR gaming on your phone.
It definitely keeps you coming back because the fidelity of the characters are so strong. The options are really on point, and the interface itself and the UI is elegant.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a very talented art and design team. We take pride in in the quality of the app end to end, from the moment that you first open it and you get the loading screen and you create your account to when you're actually in AR. We've really thought through every single screen, every single mesh, every single texture. We want it to feel like a very premium experience on your phone.
Can you tell me about a little bit the beginnings of Jadu AR and how you connected with them?
Yeah, so Jadu as a company, they officially formed maybe 4 years ago. And yeah, it must have been 4 years ago because it was around the start of the pandemic. They released, I think it was called Musical Holograms on the App Store. And this was an AR mobile app experience as well. And that actually did pretty well, like with TikTok, with the rise of TikTok, people were sharing these musical holograms from some of their favorite music artists. And then Jadu pivoted a little bit once Web3 started gaining popularity with NFTs. It's been a long journey of pivots for Jadu as a company to arrive at, okay, we're building a fighting game. And even before the company was officially formed, our co-founders have been working in augmented reality since they were in college. Asid, our CEO, I actually met him when I think he was still finishing college, but he was premiering one of his AR experiences at Sundance Film Festival. Early on, he did a lot of cinematic based headset AR. And I was working at Unity at the time. I was a technical producer on the Made with Unity team. And I was so impressed by not only his work, but just him as an individual person. Like the fact that he was a college student premiering something at Sundance Film Festival. So we actually at Unity, we created this program called Unity for Humanity because we wanted to find a way to give Asid money, essentially, to give his team money to build the experience that he was working on called Terminal 3, which basically gave the viewer the experience of what it's like to be a brown person going through customs in the US, like someone coming from Pakistan or countries in Southeast Asia, like what their experience is. And so we created this program basically to highlight not just AR experiences, but anything that was made with the Unity engine that was doing some social good. So I have known Asid for a while, but then we kind of fell out of touch. I went and had a couple other gigs after Unity. But then as soon as I heard that, he had started the startup, he had some seed funding, we reconnected. And that's when I joined Jadu all in a little over 2 years ago.
That's so exciting that he's been able to be flexible and pivot with the changes to get through the last few years. When you think about augmented reality on mobile, a lot of it is location based, and
Yes.
you're activating QR codes or it's a scavenger hunt. There's all these other sort of environmental components with mobile AR that seem like a default. This breaks that pattern a lot because you can play it anywhere, but it's like your own little battle arena wherever you are. So I was very delighted by the whole thing, and I'm not into like fighting games.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. It has taken many years to arrive at this, and I think that's something that everyone on our team, especially our founders have done really well is adapted and pivoted to how are we going to bring AR forward. And that's why a couple years ago like we did introduce some in-game NFTs because we were like, "Hey, here's a way we can get some avatars into AR and show people how they can bring their NFTs to life in AR." And even though we've since pivoted a little bit away from that to focus more on bringing this game to just the average consumer, and you don't need an NFT wallet or anything, that helped us to build a community, that helped us to gain a following. And a lot of the early stuff that the team did around headsets and cinematic experience, there was so much learning there about what works, what looks really good, what feels really good. So yeah, it has been all about adapting to the latest technology and also just years of learning as a team.
It sounds like you all were leaning into the change, right? You weren't attached to one thing so that if it didn't necessarily work, you were throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, exactly. Around the end of 2022, we knew we wanted to build a game for mobile that was avatar based. We did a lot of prototyping. We released some early experiences on test flight, and they just weren't really working. There was that initial novelty of AR. It was really fun, but there was nothing that would keep people coming back. So then we said, okay, let's just try to build a fighting game. Like, we have this theory, we have these reasons we think it'll work. We just got to try it. So we did this really intense 3-week sprint. The whole team, from our art and animation team to our back-end engineering team, and of course our gameplay team, we put together a prototype of what a fighting game could look like in AR in 3 weeks, and we shipped it on test flight to our community just in time for the holidays. And we got really incredible feedback from that prototype that basically told us we have to go all in on this. It was the best thing that we had tried so far. And that's when we had to kind of adapt. I don't think anyone on the team was expecting to be building a fighting game, actually. Like, a lot of us, this was our first time building a fighting game. So we had to go in and learn, okay, what's the best way to set up the networking architecture? What's the best way to set up the hitboxes and the hurt boxes, and make sure that the animations run seamlessly with this really fast-paced gameplay? Oh, and then there's all these other challenges we have to work around that are AR specific, like the limited field of view. We have no control over the game camera. We have to optimize for all of our players' environments. We have to debug all of this AR environment data and also debug it in multiplayer. So there was so many hurdles ahead, actually. Like, I remember just feeling, coming back from that prototype, and it was very exciting because we finally had figured out, okay, this is what we're building. But also there was just this mountain of technical and design challenges that we needed to solve to get it to where it is now. But we took them one at a time, and we figured it out, and we're continuing to figure it out. We've been slowly improving, or actually, I wouldn't say slowly. We've been very
right. There's nothing slow.
No, there's nothing slow. Yeah, no, there's nothing slow. It's been 6 months since we shipped publicly, and we've made massive improvements to the experience already, just based on our learnings around AR, around player onboarding, around retention, and around like combat mechanics themselves. So that's the startup mentality, is you just have to kind of roll with it. And we can't plan too far in the future. We have goals, of course, long-term goals, but anytime we try to plan beyond 3 months out, the landscape is changing. And also we're learning so much as we're going, and we're shipping updates and trying out new prototypes. We're having our own aha moments as developers about what works and what doesn't work in AR.
With all of that change and managing the team, you talked about having a 3-week sprint. Is that like, are you running agile with that, or is it a mix of different managing strategies?
We take elements of agile that work for us. Our sprints are more like we're always sprinting. So
always be sprinting.
We're always sprinting. So our sprints are actually week-long sprints, which is untraditional in terms of agile development. I think they're usually 2 weeks. And I think that is because so much is changing week to week based on what we're learning. We just released an update a couple days ago. We already have new analytics and new learnings from that about, okay, well, what do we want to go into the next update? So we have really short sprints, and we're very reactive to what our users want and what the data is telling us. And then we also have these longer term updates that we're working towards. So for the past 6 months, we've been doing these weekly sprints where we're really quickly churning out updates, improvements, bug fixes. We've redone our onboarding flow a couple times to, figure out how can we get people to their first match sooner? How can we get people into AR with as little friction as possible? Because that is for people, it's their first time using mobile AR. So we have to also teach them how to use their phone as the game camera in this new way. So we've been doing that while simultaneously working towards a much larger update, which is we're adding new characters, we're adding a single player campaign, we're adding this whole level of progression that will make the game even more sophisticated than it is now. So yeah, I think we have some traditional elements of our development process, but also we've found what works for us, and we're doing that.
How big is the team? Where are you based? And how has that been in terms of like working remotely and managing things so quickly when people are spread out?
The team is about 45 people, I want to say, 45 full-time employees. And we are spread all over. We have people in the US, Canada, we have people in Mexico, we have a lot of people in Europe and the UK, we have people in Pakistan, we have our head of cinematics in Japan, we have someone in Australia. So
Nice global team.
we are very global, and that has its challenges. We're all remote, but it also has its advantages. Like, there's always someone working on something. The biggest challenge is around communication with a large global team like that. Every week, we have an all team meeting where we get the whole team together. It's recorded for people who can't make it. And I think that's been really good for us at our size to make sure that we're taking time to connect every single week as the full team, and everyone is up to date on what's going on across the organization. We stay in really close contact with updates. I'm in meetings every day with other teams, and then on the gameplay team, we have a stand up almost every day that's at a time that is reasonable for everyone in their various time zones. And yeah, it's been hard, but I also think the fact that we're all working from home, we don't have commutes, we have a lot of flexibility, it has enabled us to be very efficient. We're not losing time to the traditional going to and from an office.
It shows in the product how efficient you are. It's just a beautiful game. I thought it was such a fun activation at GDC. This food truck with the biryani burrito, it was just such a cool thing. And there was all the monitors. Asid was there giving a pitch to everyone in line. And it was just such a fun way to engage with Jadu out as a part of the conference, but not in the conference. He had everyone captured completely, and people got to connect. And it was like this really nice way to learn about the game. And then when you go back and play, you're like, wow, like the whole experience all the way through, from the way you thought about the activation to actually delivering on the promise of that wonderful presentation. And then I got to meet you, which I have seen you across the industry through the years. It's always nice to be inspired by the hard work to see that pay off.
Yeah, it was really inspiring for our whole team too. It felt like a coming out moment for us because we've been really heads down for the past 2 years. I haven't really left my home office much. We've been developing, and it is, sometimes I forget too that there are people that are playing our game. People know about us because we're so in our zones every day as developers. And this goes for the whole company because everyone at Jadu is very involved in the development process. We don't have any middle managers. We have some project managers, but they are just as busy as the rest of us with planning and execution and making sure that everything is landing. So the whole team is incredibly focused on building and creating. It was really nice to just take a step back and be like, wow, look at what we've built, guys. This is awesome. And yeah, the food truck activation was the perfect way to announce one of our new characters, Cha Cha Tuk Tuk, who is our first Desi character. He's a truck driver from South Asia. That's his backstory. And he's one of the new fighters that we're introducing in season 1, hence the Indian food.
So let's talk about the story a little bit, because there is a story to this world. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so the story revolves around the Avas. This was an NFT collection that we released, an avatar collection in 2022. And the Avas have basically arrived on Earth, and they've brought with them Bloom. Bloom is essentially this radioactive element that spreads. And this is what brings all the characters to life. Each character has their own backstory and their own attributes that makes them unique, but ultimately they're all fighting for glory. They're fighting to level up, and we have an amazing creative director who will give us a lot of narrative and backstory, but ultimately it's a fighting game, and people are fighting to win. that's
to level up.
To level up. That's the main point of the game. But we do have a backstory all around our Avas. Actually, we worked with Michael Bay on this avatar collection for the Avas and released a really nice cinematic trailer in partnership with him that tells the story of the Avas and how they've arrived on Earth and the bloom that they brought with them and their origin story. So we tend to lean into that a little bit when we're coming up with new narratives for, okay, well, what is this? How does this character fit into things? And we do like to seamlessly tie things into a story. And that's something that we're planning to do with our single player campaign, which is coming out soon. We're adding a whole new story element and actually a lot of RPG elements to the game, where you as the player get to feel like you're progressing through this world, and it all revolves around these Avas. We have a single player campaign called Jailbreak, where you go through these different levels, and you are playing as your Bloomborn, which is your more human like character. That's the one that you were mentioning with the space buns, which is also my preferred hairstyle, by the way, for my Bloomborn. So you're fighting as your Bloomborn, and you're going through these different levels in a jail cell, and you're fighting all these different Ava guards trying to break out of jail. And then the prize at the end of breaking out of jail is you unlock a new character. It has this magical element to it, which Jadu means magic, by the way. That's the meaning of the company name.
I'm curious about the gameplay engineering role and how you transitioned into that role from Unity.
Yeah, gameplay engineering is by far my favorite form of software engineering that I've done. I actually come from, my foundation of education is in electrical engineering, which is not as creative, but built a lot of those core engineering foundations. And gameplay engineering, I think, is the most fun to me because you get to combine traditional engineering and software development skills that you can take from anywhere. So I started my career working as a software engineer, working on a web application, and then I learned Unity, and I took those core engineering skills that I learned to learn object-oriented programming in C#, and then over time also gained more gameplay mechanic intuition and better sense of what feels good in a game. And that's I think what makes gameplay engineering really special, is you get to flex this design creativity muscle, as well as it's deeply technical. So it's a kind of
The best of both worlds.
It's the best of both worlds. And actually at Jadu, we don't have a game designer. We have our game director, who is Asid, our CEO. We have a design team who is mostly focused on UI, UX design and building all of those really premium elements that you mentioned that look so good. But a lot of the gameplay mechanics are prototyped and designed by our gameplay engineering team. So I feel like we have the best job ever, because we get to be constantly iterating and trying new things. And if someone has an idea, like, hey, like, why don't we try this for a new mechanic? We try it. Like, there's no game design document that tells us this is what the game is going to be. I think that's something that's pretty unique to Jadu. Most games that I've worked on did have a designer. But that's been something that I think has been really fun for me and for our whole team of gameplay engineers. So for someone who's looking to get started in gameplay engineering, I would say, yeah, you would want to take maybe a combination of like introduction to game design and introduction to game programming classes. And these can be courses that you just do online. I'm a Unity girl. I worked at Unity. I've only ever really used Unity, so I think Unity is a little bit friendlier to beginners. But of course, there's also Unreal. So definitely pick up a game engine, do some tutorials, and build a game. That's my biggest piece of advice, even if it's a really simple game where you're just controlling an avatar to collect some energy orbs. I mean, that was one of the first things that we built at Jadu in AR. So that would be my advice.
Is to get that solid foundation and then experiment and play and make sure that you're building.
Yeah, but it is something that it's like you're going to learn by doing. I think a lot of the best people that I've worked with in this industry don't actually have a formal game design education, or they don't even have an engineering degree. It's something that you can totally learn on your own and pivot into at any point in your career, which is also, I think, something that's really cool about working in game development. I know a lot of people that come from other forms of software development or people who come from music and have ended up landing in game development just by iterating and gaining that intuition over time of what feels good.
Looking back, what was your first aha moment with immersive technology?
So my first aha moment with immersive technology actually happened around the time that I was finishing school. So I was graduating with a degree in electrical engineering. I knew that I kind of wanted to pivot into something more software engineering focused, just because I think a lot of the work in software sounded a lot more exciting to me. So I went to a career fair, as one does when they kind of are a little lost as a 22-year-old figuring out what they're going to do. And I got introduced to this virtual reality company in Santa Barbara. I went to school at UC Santa Barbara. The company is called WorldViz, and they have built a lot of academic and enterprise solutions using virtual reality. I hadn't even really heard of VR. This was in 2014. So it was like starting to emerge more prominently with the Oculus and everything coming out around that time. But I got a job interview with this company, and as a part of my interview, they had me do this experience, which I think is something that a lot of people try for their first VR experience. It's where you walk the plank.
Oh no, Richie's plank experience.
Yes, are you familiar with this one?
I am. Well, I mean, it was the classic,
It was
right?
a
It was like,
classic, yeah. And I was absolutely terrified. And I was also like blown away at the way that my mind convinced me that I was going to fall off of this plank to my death. But that was, that was my first moment getting introduced to VR. And I ended up getting a job at this company. I worked there for about a year and then moved on to other things, but stayed within VR AR gaming industry since then. And it's been about 10 years now. So it is always funny to think back to that moment, because I feel like I kind of accidentally ended up in VR because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something in software, something that was a little bit more creative. I always loved video games as a kid, so I think it was a natural falling into. But yeah, the fact that I ended up working at VR all because I went to this career fair and tried this demo, and since then I've built. I haven't ever really built a traditional game, but I've built non-XR games as well. I developed a game for the Peloton bike, for instance, which is like untraditional, but not VR AR. Also worked on some gameplay prototypes for the MSG Sphere, but now focusing on AR gaming for the past few years. So I've really tried a lot of different things in immersive gaming tech over the course of my career. And it all kind of goes back to that career fair and that plank demo that I did in my early 20s.
Were there any risks that you took early on that paid off? You started as a film studies major.
Yes, I did. I was a film studies major for maybe 1/4. Yeah, I really missed math and science classes. So it was a big risk, I think, that I took going to engineering. The reason I chose electrical engineering is because my dad was an electrical engineer and I was, again, a lost college student, which I really want to do something that's a little bit more technical. That was basically my decision making at 19, was if my dad could do it, so can I. But I started off in film because I always wanted to work in entertainment. So I think the way that my path has aligned between starting in film studies, moving to electrical engineering, getting into software engineering, and now doing game development, it feels right. It's like, I found the way to combine entertainment and creativity with engineering. But yeah, that was a big risk. And then I think there was the other big risk of like, okay, I got this electrical engineering degree and now I'm going to totally pivot and go work in virtual reality software. I've certainly taken a lot of risks that have paid off. I do think probably the biggest risk I took in my career was joining Jadu 2 years ago. At the time, I had a job that I really loved. I was working at Peloton building games for the Peloton bike. And it was an incredible company to work for. I was learning a lot. I was very happy there. I only ended up staying there for a year, which was a huge surprise to me when I got the job at Peloton. I was like, oh, I'm going to stay here for a long time. This is such a great place to work. But then, yeah, I took that big risk in coming to Jadu, this small AR startup. And I think that was probably the biggest risk I've taken in my career. And it totally paid off. The past 2 years have been by far the most exciting in my career in terms of how much I'm learning, how much I'm building, the connections that I've made. And I think it's totally worth it to take those risks.
What stands out to you over the past 10 years that you've been at the heart of emerging tech? What surprises you? What are you still looking forward to? What excites you about the developments of the industry in the last decade?
One thing that's really surprised me is how well VR gaming is doing. This past year, even, you're hearing a lot about teenagers asking for the Meta Quest for Christmas. And it's become such a popular consumer product now. And I think, that was always the goal, right? But I remember back in like 2014, 2015, kind of wondering like, is this going anywhere? And yes, it was. Back then, when I told people I was working in virtual reality development, they're like, what's that? And people were kind of scared of it. Like, oh, is it going to be this dystopian thing? So I'm really looking forward to hitting that point now with AR, because I think we're following a similar pattern here. Like AR adoption has been slow and gradual. People usually immediately think of Pokemon Go. Hopefully a year from now, they think of Jadu when they hear AR gaming.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily. It was so cool to see what a community you already had built in within 6 months, because there's a there.
Yes.
When you go play.
Yeah, there is. We have a lot of active users. As of March, we had over 220,000 downloads. We have a very active community in Discord. A lot of our top players have logged over 5,000 matches in AR. There are people who are playing this, and we actually really haven't spent that much on marketing yet. So we run ads on TikTok and Snapchat, and our target market is really teenagers, people who are playing games on their phone, who have time to play a lot of games on their phone, like that alpha generation and Gen Z. Gen Z is even maybe a little old for our target market.
Yeah, but for the kid and everyone.
Exactly.
also did want to talk a little bit about the impact of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Does that have any kind of impact on your roadmap? Are you incorporating anything like that right now in terms of player characters, or how are you incorporating AI, if at all?
Yeah, we use a little bit of AI for concepting on the art side and just to explore creative ideas quicker. But ultimately, at the end of the day, everything is touched by an artist, and like games are an art form, and the end result we believe needs to be driven by an artist. So I think we're using AI lightly to, yeah, to speed up the conceptual phase a bit. I'm also very interested in using AI and machine learning to create more sophisticated behaviors for our non-player characters in the games. We're not doing this yet, but this is something that I could see us doing in the near future, just to have more sophisticated behaviors, especially as we transition to a more single player campaign, RPG focused core loop. So we'll want to have some really sophisticated AI characters as well. But yeah, on the art side, where our use is very light. I think AI is a great tool for artists, but ultimately, AI can't replace human creativity.
I'm curious how much forecasting you engage in versus leveraging the day-to-day player experience and customer acquisition goals. Is there a golden rule that you have about the future?
I think our golden rule about the future is just like optimism and to the point where we've like joked that we're like delusionally optimistic about the future of AR. But for us, typically like forecasting is just it's a waste of time. And of course we're keeping a close eye on like the future of wearables. We recently bought a bunch of Apple Vision Pros for the team, and we are thinking about like a future where we could have a version of Jadu on a headset as well as our core mobile experience. But right now, we're just staying focused on shipping and building the best experience that we can with the tech that's available and where we believe our users to be. So we're really going all in on mobile AR. We're very bullish on mobile AR, just because billions of people have mobile devices. So we think that's where the real opportunity is right now.
Final advice for beginner AR developers as they build their skills? Anything that you see in the field where people need more skills, or anything that might help them improve their chances for getting hired?
Yeah, I have interviewed a lot of people and looked at a lot of different resumes. And I think for someone who's new or just getting started in game development, whether they're just graduating school or they're pivoting from another industry, having some personal projects to show it goes a long way. And being able to talk about the learnings that you had from those personal projects, that's usually what I'm looking for when I'm hiring a game developer for my team. Is okay, like, has this person made a game? Even maybe it's not something that's has a lot of players, but even if they've made a game on their own, gone through that process and learned something from it, that is definitely going to be the biggest thing that I'm looking for when I'm hiring, even more so than like education, or if they have any formal training in game development. So really just get your hands dirty as soon as you can. Like if you're just getting started, you got to just dive in, download a game engine like Unity or Unreal, take those first step tutorials, and think about a game that you'd like to build. And it can be something super simple. You can just basically copy the mechanics from existing games, add your own spin on it. But I would say build something that you can showcase, and that will help you get a job in the industry.
Nice. Yeah, it's great to know that there's so many more tools that are available. It's so much easier now at a very low cost of entry, I feel.
Yes.
Any other final thoughts before we head out?
I do feel very inspired by AR. I think, like, going back to what we were talking about earlier with like the path that we've seen with virtual reality and like some of the fear around it and like, oh, is it going to be isolating? But, it ended up doing quite well and become this really engaging, fun, sometimes even social experience for people. I see AR following a similar path and then some. I think the fact that augmented reality is not fully immersive and it allows us to have technology and the real environment, your real world environment coexist. And I think it's really beautiful, actually. So I'm looking forward to the day where there's a lot of other AR games and experiences like Jadu out there and having these social and engaging AR experiences.
Wonderful. Well, it was so inspiring to sit down with you and talk about Jadu. How can we keep up with Jadu and the latest developments?
So the best thing to do is to download our app. You can just search Jadu Fight in AR on the App Store or on Google Play and try it out. You'll get all of the updates and then join our Discord server as well. We can add a link to that in the show notes.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much, Sarah. I'm really looking forward to leveling up and building out my avatar in Jadu and seeing what comes next.
Thank you.
I hope this episode inspires you to boldly embrace change and take calculated risks on your immersive journey. Be sure to check the show notes for links and resources. You can support Zero to Start by giving us a rating and sharing this episode with your community. Thanks for listening. Until next time, happy installing.